All right, y'all, welcome to the latest podcast. We are back. We had a little small hiccup due to the hurricane, but you know what I'm saying? We wanted to start fresh, make sure everybody was, back safe doing what they wanted to do. And we got a special guest today. He got a lot of stories to tell you today. So we got an artist, he's a speaker, he's a founder of a nonprofit called the Block Hustle, and he has his very own podcast called the Incarceration Podcast. I want to welcome today EI, the King. What's going on, my man?
Yes,
how you doing, my brother?
What's going on, my G? Honor to be on, bro. Thank you for having me on the pod, dog. Yes, sir.
And for those that don't know, we usually do the performance before we get on the podcast and stuff like that. And this man literally came on here and killed it. And the name of the song was called, what was the name of the song? Life Sentence? Life Sentence, man. I wanted to just tell you straight up from the bottom of my heart. That song right there really touched me, man. Yeah. And I want to just feed off of that. We're going to jump right into that story of that. So tell me about that song. Like, why made you pick that song exactly?
Yeah, for sure, man. For those who don't know my story, I did 12 years in prison. State raised, chain gang, baby. You know what I mean? Grew up, in the system, juvenile programs, juvenile detentions. So that's my background. That's my story. And, that's where God transformed my life as in the prison system. Long story short, throughout my incarceration, encountered Jesus, God transformed my life. Now, I do prison ministry throughout the nation. So I'm going to this prison in Texas, and as I'm, traveling to Texas, I know that this is like a max prison, and everybody at this prison, like a large percentage of them got life. Yeah. And one of my dogs is there who has a life sentence. Yeah. So as I'm going, I'm thinking about how am I gonna share something that's gonna resonate with people that I've never been sentenced to life? I can't relate to that. Obviously I did 12 years, but I've never been sentenced to life. So while I was driving, I was just praying as God just to lay a message on my heart. I can minister to them, and encourage them. And while I was driving, I was listening to instrumentals as well. And this is where this song came from. It's very rarely that I write a song specifically for other people or for somebody else. I normally write out of my own experience. So that's where Life Sentence came from. I was directing it to those who've been sentenced to life. Because I got a lot of big homies and a lot of friends, of course, that I did years with in prison who have been sentenced to life. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You mentioned that you did 12 years in prison. Do you want to talk about what you went in for and stuff like that? Yeah, for
sure. Man, long story short, I grew up fast. My father wasn't in the home. Didn't have the worst upbringing, but just with my dad not being present, I think as a kid, that obviously kind of messes with our psyche, makes you feel worthless and less than. I hit puberty late, smallest kid in every class, so I always felt like I had to prove myself to everybody. Yeah. So it led me to be really aggressive and very. I felt like I just had to prove a point. I had a chip on my shoulder. So long story short, man, I was an athlete, but my best friend's older brother was a big dope boy. Yeah. So I seen the influence that he had in the street, and his word was law, and everybody listened to him, everybody followed him. So that began to get me attracted to the street lifestyle, and I started selling dope and robbing at a young age, 13, 14, which led to arrests, in and out of juvenile programs, juvenile detention centers, in and out from my teenage years. And it just got me institutionalized to where society became vacation for me and prison became my home. And I got used to being incarcerated. So I went to prison for the first time when I was 18 for a drug deal gone bad, supposedly. Yeah. And I got sentenced to 2.5 years. I got out for 8 months. I went back to prison for a high-speed chase, allegedly having drugs in the vehicle, did another 2 years. Then I got out for 6 months, and I went back to prison again for another high-speed chase where I accidentally hit a police officer with my vehicle during the high-speed chase, and I got sentenced to 9 years, which I did 7 years, 8 months. So I did 12 years total over the course of 3 prison bids. Yeah. So from 18 to 31, I only was in society for 14 months. Did over 12 years, not including all the juvenile time.
So let me ask you this. So while you was in prison, is that where you say that you kind of took a view of your life and you wanted to change? What moment were you where you was in prison where you was I need to change my life?
Yeah, I would say, man, going to prison my first time at 18, my baby mama was pregnant with twins. And like I mentioned, even going to prison at 18, I already was in juvenile program after juvenile program. So I already was going in, and I was already sick of it. So I heard the gospel for the first time at 18 years old in the county jail, committed my life to Jesus. But while I'd be in prison, I'd authentically seek the Lord and begin to develop a relationship with God. But every time I get out of prison, I didn't know how to live that life in society, and I'd always fall back into a street lifestyle that led me to just crash out and let me continue to go right back to prison. But I wouldn't say till my third bid. I was 23 going into prison my third time. I had 2 kids. They were 4 years old at the time. I got sentenced to 9 years. I knew I was going to miss the entirety of their childhood. And I was just freaking broken, dog. Yeah. And, you know, I was at the lowest point of my life. And I remember whenever I was sentenced at that time, I was in confinement because I was wilding out, fighting, getting a whole bunch of charges in the county jail. I remember going back to my confinement cell for the first time in my life, genuinely and truly contemplating suicide, staring at the sprinkler, knowing how people kill themselves, whether in, you know, a cell with the sprinkler and a bed sheet. And that was probably the lowest point of my life, bro. You know? Yeah. But praise be to God that in the middle of my brokenness, God had purpose for it. Do it all, you know? No,
that's deep. I like to ask it because you know, you have a lot of time to think about like everything. So it's like, I always wanted to know, like, you know what I'm saying, what was that time and the moment where you was like, all right, I got to stop doing this shit, you feel me? So I got to like change my, you know, my ways. Yeah. So, you know, when you was in there, was that like when you started getting into music, or was you doing that beforehand?
Yeah, I was rapping my whole life. Yeah. I've always been very vocal and creative. I remember as a kid, like maybe like 4 or 5 years old, when my mom would be driving, I would be like in the back seat, like freestyling over like, you know, pop music, you know what I mean? Just making stuff up, just being goofy. But as I got older and being influenced by the streets and hip hop culture, you know, we'd always be like on the block selling dope, freestyling, or be at the studio and be rapping. So it was always an outlet for me, and especially like in juvenile programs. But I didn't begin to take it serious until I was in prison. And then of course my faith, you know, really affected my music. And it was still street, but it was more empowering the streets. And then whenever my music got attached to a purpose is when I began to take music serious. Yeah. I see that because it's like, I was going to ask you too, like, how did that, because when it comes to being an artist, right, you got to go with like how you want to style your music. Like, you know what I'm saying? You want to talk about the streets, or you want to talk about, you know, you being a changed man and stuff like that, because that can really influence you in a way. So what would you say, like, you're more talking about like how you came from that, you know what I mean? Talking about your history, about your music, like what type of music are you currently making right now? Yeah. You know what I mean? To me, the definition of art is like the expression of self. Yeah. You know, so for me, music is always honestly first for me. It's how I vent. It's how I cope and deal with what I'm going through. So whatever I'm going through in life, or whatever I've gone through, for whatever moment in time causes me to write it, that's why I write it, is because I get it, you know, it comes, you know, out of me. It comes like from my heart. So it's not like, I wouldn't approach music like a business would approach marketing their intended audience. I just try to just share my story and share my authentic self. And it resonates with people who are like me, who have similar experiences, you know?
So when you was in there, how many, like, was you writing the whole entire time, or like what was it? Like,
I wrote my first album in prison, bro.
The first one?
The
very first one. Tell me about that, like how that was. Like you already knew, like when you was coming out, you was like, this is gonna be the album. Yeah, so my dog was shot and killed whenever I was in prison. Yeah. And that rocked my world. That's probably honestly one of the really big turning points in my life. And I remember I woke up 4 o'clock in the morning the day after he got killed, after I got off the phone with my mom and she told me. And I was just freaking broken, dog. I was hurt. I was upset because he just got his life changed and he was leaving the streets alone and doing good. And it's like, dang. And now all of a sudden he gets shot and killed. And I was really mad at God. I didn't understand why. So while that morning when I woke up 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm praying, I'm spending time with God, questioning why. And God just gave me a vision, and God began to show me that he was going to use music and he was going to use my story and my experiences to reach the streets with the gospel. So when that experience happened, a fire began to just like rage in my soul, to where like I had a why now, I had a purpose. And ever since then, right, maybe about 5 years left. And in the laundry room in prison is like the only privacy you can get if you close the door. And that was my studio, you know, so I'd be in the laundry room all day just writing the instrumentals and just writing. And man, it had a crazy vision from God. And I knew that God was going to catapult it when I got out. And so I wrote my whole first album when I was in prison, bro. That's crazy. The Incarceration. Yeah. So that with that album, I always wanted to know, so like as soon as you got out, was that like the first thing you did was get right into the studio? Yeah, everything was planned, bro. Really? Everything was planned. I've been filming my documentary from the day of my release. So I had a camera crew at the release, the work release center. So the moment I was walking out of the prison work release center, I had a camera crew filming my documentary. The second day, of course, I spent the day with my kids and with the churches on a Sunday. But the very next day, for the next 3 days, I had like, I think 8-hour blocks booked in the studio. And big shout out to Max Foreman, man, a Tampa engineer. And I was just locked in with Max for the next couple of days and the next couple of weeks. And that just began the process of recording of the album that I wrote while I was incarcerated. Word. What advice would you give people that's actually like locked in right now, and then you actually had a time where you knew you was going to get out, but like what would you like tell people that you knew exactly like that's going in or either facing life or that never been in the prison system and they actually got their first bid and how long they got to do? Like what advice would you give them?
Yeah, obviously, man, I just identified, bro. Like, bro, it sucks. You know what I mean? Like, that's obvious.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It. Yeah,
it sucks. But the reality is, bro, that in the middle of chaos, in the middle of pain, in the middle of devastation, there's still purpose in it. Yeah. God got a purpose for you in the middle of that storm, in the middle of that bid. And I just want to encourage them or anybody who's facing that, like, it's not the end. You know what I mean? Like, I done seen numerous occasions of friends of mine, of people that I know who have been sentenced to life 20, 40 years, and they come back on appeal and they're out. You know what I mean? And they're home. And I do ministry events with them now in prisons. And so just don't give up and know that, man, sometimes God will allow conflict for the sole purpose to draw us closer to him. And all that pain and all that chaos, God will use it to shape us and to build us to be the people that we are today. Now, I wouldn't take back 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 year, or 1 decade because God used all that time to make me who I am today. And I won't take none of it back.
That's deep. That's real deep, man. I appreciate that, man. That's some real knowledge right there. So I wanted to say, like, when you was doing the ministry, right? Did you know you wanted to do that as soon as you got out, or was that like? Because how did you get back into that, going back in the system? Like, did you know you always want to go and get back or give knowledge? And like, tell me about how that all happened.
Yeah. So whenever God gave me the vision for music, actually the music is to me is secondary. Yeah. The vision that God gave me in prison is ministry, but God showed me that He was going to use music as the tool to scale the ministry, and that's exactly what happened. But honestly, like in prison, I knew I was gonna get out and do prison ministry to some degree, just because obviously I did 12 years in the chain gang. I got to go back and see my dogs and share my story. Yep. But I had no idea it would be to the degree in which it is now. And what happened was in prison, they got tablets now. You know, so they got podcasts on these prison tablets. Right. And I was featured on like the #1 podcast in the prison system on these tablets. And they started playing because they knew I just came home from prison and God transformed my life. So they kind of wanted to champion my story. So when they started playing my music videos, all my dogs from the chain gang are calling me like, Brody, like that music video is fire. And it just meant the world to me that my dogs could see my music videos and see what God was doing in my life. But little did I know that it would become like national, to where no matter whatever county jail or prison or federal or state I go into throughout the nation, people know who I am, they know my music, and they know my story, most importantly, what God did in my life. And that's when I began to see, and that's when God began to show me that, of course, we do ministry out here in the streets and different events, but God always showed me it's from that point on that, you know, that's always going to be like a priority for me in ministry is the chain gang, you know?
Yeah. I know that feeling you got when someone hits you up and like, bro, I seen you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I can relate to a lot of the things. Like when someone's like reposting some of the Tampa latest content, they're like, bro, that's you. That feeling you get is like, it makes you know that you're doing something what you're supposed to be doing. Sure. You know what I mean? It makes you want to keep going, give you that energy. You know what I mean? Sure. So like, what I wanted to talk about was like, when you was doing that, what would you say like was your motive? Was that you just wanted to get out and showcase, or was it just the music more opposed? Like you want to get back to your friends, obviously, right? But that music was a way to, I guess, connect to them as well. Like, tell me about that. Like, is it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, that's fire. That's a fire question. I would always say, bro, like, a motto that we have in my life in the ministry is like, what's your why? Yeah, what's your why? What's your why? You know what I mean? So for me, like, don't get me wrong, God blesses me in all different types of ways and avenues. And it's cool when you link with like celebrities or you get major playlistings and you get like, those opportunities are cool and God uses it, but it don't hit. You know what I mean? Like, it does for a minute, but it fades. What means the most to me is whenever I go into a prison and somebody comes up to me and they're crying, like, dog, I was about to kill myself. I was sentenced to life in the county jail, and I was gonna come to prison to kill myself. And they seen the music video of Life Sentence, and they're telling me this crying, this telling me how thankful they are that God used that song to encourage them. So that's my why, you know? So I realize as God continues to bless my life and I continue to progress and elevate, that all the other stuff is cool, God uses to bless me, but it ain't hidden. What's hidden is what's attached to your purpose. So for me, the win is as long as lives are genuinely being impacted and changed and the gospel is being proclaimed and people are being pointed to Jesus, that's the win. You know? Empowerment. That's the win.
That's good, man. I want to talk to you about that podcast.
Yeah.
That podcast. So
Yeah.
what made you get onto that podcast? Because I seen it, because I ain't gonna lie, it's really dope, because you got about like what, 25,000 followers on there.
Yeah.
And it's like you really talk about like a lot of stuff. Like tell whoever is listening right now what you can expect on that podcast. Because like when I went through it, I was like, damn, this is really interesting. These stories is crazy. So talk about that, like how that came about. And, like,
it's funny because I never even wanted to do YouTube like that. Shout out to Joe Baker, man. He's a YouTuber out in Dallas. He's a big prison YouTuber. So I went viral in prison before I came home. I had posted like on a TikTok in prison, and it got like 1 million views. So I had like 50K before I even came home.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's how he started following me. And like he told me every time he would DM me like before I was getting out, he's like, bro, you need to start a YouTube channel and tell your prison stories. But I was like, nah. I just kept putting it on the back burner. But then I just kept hearing it. And then whenever I started, like, and of course it took me about a year for it to jump. And it just jumped, bro. And what it is, it's just authentic stories of my experience of being incarcerated. So it's crazy, funny, goofy, weird, whatever you can imagine that happens in prison. I share those stories, and we interview other people who've been in prison as well. But the main aim, though, of that podcast is we want to champion the underdog stories of convicts coming home and overcoming that lifestyle of crime and transitioning back in society successfully. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So...
No, I understand the reasoning why behind that. But I gotta ask though, what is your craziest story that, you know what I'm saying, that happened while you was in prison? Because I seen the video, you had like about 52 episodes going on right now. So I wanted to know like exactly what was the craziest story that you want to share on this podcast right now.
Crazy stories, bro, are countless, dog. I'm trying to think of one that I haven't really put out there. Because if you go to my channel, bro, there's so many of them.
Yeah. I want to know what's one that stuck out to you. Like, when I just asked you this question, what was one that was like in
the
your
one
top
that just came to my mind? That just came to my mind. I'm gonna go ahead and spit it. It wasn't like, of course, man. I done seen plenty of people stabbed. I done seen so much violence you can't even comprehend. But I would say the first thing that came to my mind when you just asked that was seeing a dude get, like, he was sleeping next to me, and I seen another dude. I was asleep too. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and the dude was trying to check in. He was crashing out. That means like he's trying to get off the pound, and he didn't want to like go out the soft way and like ask for safety and go ask to get shipped off the pound. So what people do is they crash out and they just like attack people openly in front of the police to such a degree to where they'll ship you off the compound. So we're in an open bay dorm and the dude's sleeping next to me, and all of a sudden I just hear and I look over and this dude is just teeing off on the dude sleeping next to me. Literally, like, your bunks are right next to each other. So he's like 2 feet from me, not even. I can reach over and like, you can reach over and hit the bunk. And he's just teeing off on him. He hits the ground. And the reason why that comes to my mind is because it wasn't just because the guy was getting beat up, but it was because it was nonstop for like a good like 5 minutes, no exaggeration, and literally blood everywhere, police not coming out. And it was just in the middle of the sleep jumping up. You know what I mean? So to me, like, that's not the most violent thing that I've seen, of course, but that's something that always pops into my mind just because it was like, it's a really crazy, shocking moment at 4 o'clock in the morning, waking up to this.
What do you do in that moment? Like, what do you do? Because, you know, it's a lot of, you know, rules to the prison system.
You got to
mean?
stay in your own lane, bro. That's like one of the
mind
laws.
your own business type thing.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of sad, especially when it comes to like you know, like there's a fine line of, I guess, what's doing the right thing. But then again, you don't know the backstory. You don't know, you have no idea what's going on, whether it's gang affiliation or whether it's his charges, or you don't know what conflict they had. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to stand on your own too and handle your own, you know, and just kind of like stay in your own lane. That's kind of like law of the land in a chain gang, you know?
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't even know what to do. I'll just act like I'm asleep, bro.
It's crazy because it desensitizes you over time. Over years and years and years, when you see so much violence and crazy stuff, it's like nothing.
It's normal.
Someone to get stabbed right in front of you, and it's like when they open up yard. You know what I mean? It's like you see it so much, it's like nothing, you know? So it kind of desensitizes you over time.
Damn, that's a crazy story, man. So I wanted to talk to you. Let's take it back to when you got out. Let's talk about your nonprofit, the Block Hustle. Like, you know what I'm saying? How'd you create that? And then just tell the details about behind that, because I'm checking out your website. You know, you got the church in the streets. You know, you're out there, you're preaching, walking the streets. I seen a couple of videos that actually went viral, just you out there doing it and stuff like that. So let's talk about the Block Hustle, man.
Yeah, man. So Block Hustle, that's the ministry, man. You know, that's the motto, church in the streets. And it's just a whole bunch of convicts. You know what I mean? A lot of us come from the chain gang, come from previous gang affiliation, ex-dope boys, ex-robbers, whatever. And God just laid it upon our hearts to be intentional about going back to the streets with the gospel, but not like in a kumbaya, corny, cheesy Christian way, but an authentic, real, genuine way, to where we try to, like, whenever we go throughout the nation, we go to different cities, we try to go to the most treacherous, dangerous, poverty-stricken areas of town. We go right back to the block, we go back to the trap, we go out there, we just street evangelize, pull up on everybody, you know what I mean, share our story, share the gospel. We always try to meet tangible needs, bringing groceries, going door to door, feeding families. But then we normally always end the evening with like a block party. We bring a sound system, and we'll partner with other nonprofits, other churches and organizations, and really just try to create a space in the community to where we can meet people where they're at and preach the gospel and present Jesus, but not like in a religious or like kind of in your face, maybe distasteful way, and relating to people who may be still in what we come from. So, and of course, not only do we do street outreach, but we do prison events and jail events throughout the nation as well.
Yeah, because when you were saying that about that, right, you didn't want to put, Jesus, like, I guess, in their face directly. Would you say you do the same way with your music as well? Because I see you do talk about Jesus as well, God, and like that. Like, was that the reason why you wanted to do that as well? So that's not like in their face, but you're still talking about it in a way?
I would just say, bro, it's all about being like real and being authentic. You know, like if we just met and I'm like, hey, brother, do you know Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior? Let me pray for you. Like the moment that we meet, that can be a little weird. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's led with good motives and good intentions. But like, Brody, like I don't even know you. Don't even know me. Like what's going to cause you to stop and genuine? And don't get me wrong. Like God leads some Christians to minister like that, and that's cool. And God can use that. But I think at the end of the day, it's just all about genuinely building relationships with people, because people want to first know how much you care before they know what you got to say. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I think with my music or even with our ministry, we just really want to build genuine, authentic relationships with people, and to share the fullness of life. And one thing about a walk with Jesus or redemption, it's not all pretty. So in my music, you're not just going to hear Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. You're going to hear a lot of, I got a song called Sex Addict. You know what I mean? It's a song about me trying to come home and be pure and wait to marry to honor God and sexual purity, but coming home and dropping the ball big time. You know what I mean? So it's just an authentic experience that people can relate to who are trying to go through the same thing. So I just feel like it's about authenticity and, just doing what God's leading you to do. And God leads everybody to minister differently. So,
yeah. So since you've been dropping music and stuff like that, have any labels reached out? You know what I mean? You want to talk about your labels?
My first song, I was home 3 months. My first song got me picked up by a label in Nashville. It was a distribution deal. So my very first song got me picked up by, that label in Nashville with a distribution deal. It's a 21-song contract. So God used that to immediately, just give me some motion and give me a platform, and I'm super thankful for it. But I already had a distribution deal with another distribution company, completed the contract. Now I'm back with the original distribution company. I'm still obviously fully independent. But yeah, man, praise God, because it's been nothing but, progression and growth.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, so when you came out, though, did you have to like learn the whole music industry when you came out? Because it's like a whole new, because you've been in for, a minute now. So like, how was that like working with different labels, you know what I'm saying? Because, you don't want to, nowadays, a lot of people are more focused on independent style.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So like, how was that like when you got out and you was like, if you wanted to hurry up and work with a label deal, or you just in your mind you wanted to be like an independent deal? Like, well, how was that like coming out?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely did my research in the chain gang, reading all the books, and I got some of my best friends are in the music industry. Actually, we grew up in the streets together selling dope. And they've been in the music industry since I've been in. Yeah. So they were actually, and they still are very, helpful to me and with connections and open doors and just knowledge and help me walk through things. But for me, I think, and I always share this with, when we go back into the chain gang with fellow convicts, like the hustler mentality and the hustle ambition that we had or we exercised in the streets of selling dope or whatever we were doing, that's a God-given gift. We just, it gets tainted with a street lifestyle. Yeah. But that's a gift of entrepreneurship. So whenever I got out, I'm a businessman. And I didn't know it. I just knew how to sell drugs. So whenever I got out, man, I just began to learn the industry. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things when it comes to music is a lot of artists, they just think it's only about music. And that's probably only about 10% of really where the work is. I would say the other 90 is about understanding the business and the relationships and the marketing. So, of course, with trial and error and with relationships and just with consistency, but also with the intentionality of learning the business. You know, that was kind of like the path coming home with music.
Yeah. Speaking of marketing, like, did you ever co-sign with anybody? Like, we're like working with different artists. Like, let the viewers know like who you like have worked with in the past, or are you currently working with right now?
For sure. My biggest record, which was, you know, crazy for me. Yeah. Shout out to my dog, Project Pat, man. That was a huge record for me. Sure. Yeah. So that was definitely a huge look for me. But yeah, this, you know, God opened up a lot of doors since I've been out, man. Being able to get co-signed by like Timberland. Sheesh. Just being able to meet, you know, a lot of big artists and a lot of people in the industry, you know, at these different events. And for me, number one, I always know it's God's favor, but also too, I know what's beneficial for me is my story. So whenever my dog always makes fun of me because he's like, bro, within 2 seconds, EI is going to be like, hi, I'm EI. I did 12 years in prison. You know, so he always jokes about me, but I do that intentionally for 2 reasons. Number one is because like that's my testimony. That's my story. That's where God transformed my life at. And I always want to be strategic and be intentional about sharing God's redemptive work. But also too, because man, like people want to see the underdog win. You know, and I began to realize that coming home that a lot of people, you know, when they just begin to see my heart and begin to get to know me and they hear my story, it's like they want to see me win, you know, and I know most importantly it's God's favor, but it's also people just, you know, looking out, you know.
That's facts, man. So what was your latest song? Because I seen you just drop a music video called Mood, right?
Yeah.
So to talk about that, man, because I just seen that video. Quality on that is crazy, by the way. And the music and stuff like that, man, it's dope, man. Talk about that.
Appreciate
like, what was that about?
Yeah, so I just dropped a project. It's called Relationships. Yeah. So my first project coming home was the Incarceration, and I dropped a few EPs after that and some singles. But this was my next big project. And it was pretty much just like a narrative about getting out of prison and navigating through romantic relationships and kind of just like the toxic relationships, the failures, and kind of me figuring all that out because I was locked up for so long. Like, of course, I had relationships like as a kid and in high school and all that. But even in high school, I was locked up a lot, you know? So it's just kind of like my mom narrates the project. So it's kind of just like a narrative of me navigating through some toxic relationships, you know, so it's kind of like a project that has some like, you know, some melodies and things like that. So yeah, that music video Move, we shot that in downtown Tampa and we used a mannequin. Just kind of for like, just like for some like humor, but also for like symbolism, kind of portraying the woman as like not being authentic, you know, kind of being fake, you know. So, but we just did it kind of humorously too, man. Shout out to my dog Ray. Now I let you shot it, and he's in Tampa and he's fire. Tapping with Ray.
Man, look at that sporting local, man. That's what I love, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's just within the city working together, man. Dope, making dope ass video like that, man. That's dope. So you got anything new coming up? Like,
yeah, man. What you got? So the Deluxe, the Relationships Deluxe is dropping December 15th. So I'm releasing 4 singles back to back. I think the next single is like, November 11th.
You shooting videos for those too or no?
I think there's a video dropping today.
Oh, today?
Word. Yeah, but it's for an old project. It's called Progress. That's the one with me running downtown. Like I'm running in the middle of traffic.
Using the bike.
I was riding the e-bike and I was also running downtown in the middle of traffic. Yeah, word. So this is like a visualizer. My dog AC shot that. That's being released today.
Word, that's dope. Yeah. That's dope. So, what exactly? Because you're pretty much on a lot of things. Like tell everybody where they can find you at. You know what I mean? Like your socials, and you know what I mean. If you got any other, you know, things you want to just let people know, like where you can find you at.
Sure, man. My artist name is EI the King. So you can find my music on all platforms, EI the King. Go to my official artist channel on YouTube, EI the King. Check out the music videos. I have a podcast on there as well. It's called Let Me Talk Bro. Actually, I have one of the biggest podcasts in the prison system. Yeah. Because that podcast that used to feature me, I now have my own podcast on the prison tablets. Okay. So that's what's released on the prison tablets is Let Me Talk Bro. I got another podcast, which you already mentioned, the Incarceration podcast. On YouTube, check that out. TikTok, EI the King, everywhere, man. So
I wanted to ask this before we end the show, right?
For sure.
Since you heard the news about Young Thug getting out, right?
Yeah, man. Welcome home, Thug.
Yeah. So I wanted to know because you've been through that process where you know you about to get released. You know what I mean? You've been in there for a little minute. I'm not sure how long Young Thug been in there now. He's been in there for a little bit of a minute. Like, what do you think he's doing right now? Like, you know, since you know what I'm saying, you've been through that cycle. Like,
I would assume, bro, I think pretty much everybody when they get out, especially, you know, I'm sure him, like a A-list celebrity, he probably just wants to be ducked off with the family.
Yeah.
You know, and that's pretty much everyone's priority coming home. You know, as of course you want like a home cooked meal, you know, like whatever your favorite food is, you know. Some people got the craziest like cravings, you know, like I know my dog said like when he gets out, the first thing he wants is like this style donut from Krispy Kreme.
Oh, real,
so I'm sure, man, that's normally everybody's number one focus is like a good home cooked meal or their favorite meal at whatever restaurant, but then just spending time with their kids and with family. You know, and of course, man, you got like the chaos of the world and it's cool being out. But at the end of the day, whenever you're incarcerated for especially like a long period of time, you begin to realize that the reality and the importance of life is not everything that's out here. Like it's cool, you know what I mean? But like really what life is all about, bro, is not only like our relationship with God, but like our loved ones and our family. And when you're in prison, bro, when you're incarcerated, you're really reminded of that. Of what you were neglecting or what you were taking for granted. So when you get out, it's like, man, you want to cherish that.
Damn, man, that's real deep, man. Well, I just want to thank you for coming on, man. Like everything you shared to this is like really like impacting to the community, you know what I mean? And y'all go check out his music that just dropped, and also his performance. So whatever y'all did, y'all actually should have paused this in the beginning and actually listened to that, and like actually see him perform, because it was really dope to actually see this witness live on the onset. So you know, he mentioned his channel, so y'all follow him, support local, man. That's all we do. That's why we created this platform, so you guys can get a showcase of like the amazing people we have in the city, showcase their talents and everything like that. So once again, I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. It was a dope experience. Thank you, bro.
Man, honored to be here, bro.
Yes, sir.